Welcome, everybody, to 52 Living Ideas. Thank you for joining us today. This is a Design Your Life series, which we have at the third Friday of every month. I'll be your co-host. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Evanique. For those that don't know me, it is also being co-hosted by Jing and Joe. So for the time being, we have everyone on mute. What will happen is Jing will speak first. I will speak second, and Joe will speak third. And once we're done speaking, then we will have questions for the group, and that's when we will allow participants to unmute. So whenever you're ready, Jing, go for it.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, welcome everyone. We're very honored to have so many attendants this time. And the reason we choose this topic is quite coincident because one of my friend who worked for Boeing as a accountant recently lost her job. And so she kind of do some soul searching, and she mentioned about this concept of Ikigai. And that time, that was a month ago, I never heard of this word. So she shared a YouTube video and watched it, and it's quite inspiring. I said, oh my God, this is just the Japanese version of we were studied, like by Brigitte and Dao De Jing is. And also I read the book Blue Zone before, and exactly one of the island from the 12 island that people live over 120 years old and live happily. And so it's such a coincidence I get to know about this concept, and it's very similar to the whole mission of our theory about design your life, because I think this is one of the key tool we could have to design our life, is kind of finding your mission, your Ikigai. And so I want to briefly introduce this concept. If I think you may watch the video already. So basically, they said how you find your Ikigai is like, first, find out what you love to do, and second, find what the society need, and the third one is you can get paid for it, and the fourth one, you have to be good at it. And it's actually very similar to what I was choosing my career when I was middle of high school, because I really like to draw, and I'm also good with engineering. I saw geometry, so I thought, oh, the combination is kind of architecture. That's why I only applied for architecture, and I love my job. So it's kind of interesting. And sometimes I talk with people, and they say, oh, you're just lucky. And I was surprised to hear so many people. Even one of our neighbor who is a dentist make a lot of money, and she said she hates her job. So what? I didn't understand why their people hate their job. And then they said, oh, you're lucky you have the job you love. And I said, it's maybe not just luck, maybe because I was a thinker, and I was thinking and planning it. And I think I could have maybe a movie director. That's one of the ideas. I was thinking maybe my kids go to college, I will go to study movie for a year, fulfill another dream. I just think, life need to be designed. A lot of time, as an architect, I realize we design the building and we design our life, because when you have a blueprint, an intention, then it's kind of like the book Secret mentioned. Then you draw all the energy actually help you to fulfill that vision. And the whole process is quite inspiring. Even when I cook, I found, like such a liberating experience, because when you have an idea, then you make it happen. You feel like a God is create the process of creating things is quite exciting. I think the ideal society is where everybody love what they do and be good at what they do and enjoy what they do and get paid. And then it will be a very happy society. I think a lot of time, all this conflict we experience because sometimes people are not happy. So then they tend to release that anger to the people around them. So they kind of pass on their misery to other people. So I think in order to make a more harmonious society, more better life for everyone, then we finding Ikigai maybe is a way for everyone to do. so we can start from the grassroots. So I hope this meeting will help each other, everybody here, to search for your Ikigai, and everybody find the things they love to do and enjoy your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Jing. So when Jing introduced to me this concept of Ikigai, I was like, I have no idea what this is. And then I looked at the video and I'm like, oh, this is not such a hard concept to understand initially. So I like the four concepts as the four dimensions. Um, I think it's picking something you're good at, right? So for me, just walking through, um, I always loved the law. For some reason, it just appealed to me. I mean, I remember being an 8-year-old watching LA Law and thinking to myself, I want to be an attorney. And that never really went away. And I did it. I didn't become an attorney, I became a paralegal. And how it happened was that, you know, I was, out of college and I was looking for temp jobs, something to pay the bills. And to be upon I happened upon a contract job, and the job was proofreading contracts. And then I started asking questions about those contracts. So then I got into contract law, and then that's where kind of I built from. And then once I was laid off of my job back in 2019. Yeah, 2019. I was laid off, and I got to explore what I wanted to do next. And I got another job based off my contract law skills and contract negotiation skills, and I got a job at my current company now, which is a hospital system. And I learned so much more, not just about contract law, but about healthcare law and all of the ins and outs and the dimensions and how much legal um, is infused in every area. And I really liked it. And it's just one of those things is that I never have a dull moment and I never have a dull day. And for me, I am never bored, which is what I like because then the day goes fast. Um, I feel like I've accomplished something. I feel like I've helped people out, which is kind of where we go to um, number three, which is does the world need it? And the answer to that question is yes. And one of the reasons why we need it is because, and especially in America, we are a litigious society. And what we do is we help our patients. Um, we help our patients. We help our doctors. We help, um, the employees that work for us. We help people navigate the law so that, our patients, for instance, if they need records requests for anything, we can provide that to them. Um, and for, other areas, we can help our doctors and nurses, and we can investigate things and figure out if there's anything in the process that we need to change. So doing that work makes it very interesting for me. Now I know it's not for everybody, but with Ikigai, it doesn't have to be for everybody. It's so individualized that if you love it and it contributes to the world and it's something you're good at and you can generate money, it's Ikigai. And I feel like in my career, I found that. I found all four of those things. Um, and I think it works. And that's why I stay at my job because it is great. And I do get to help people and I do love what I do. And it is very interesting. Now, does it mean that it's not frustrating at times? Of course it is. Anything's frustrating, but what gets you through those moments where it's stressful and it's frustrating is the simple fact that you like what you do and that you know what you're doing is helping other people. So for me, um, that's what I like about this concept of Ikigai.
Okay, so next. Really quickly, I'm just going to go over briefly the objective of the meetup, the Design Your Life meetup. is essentially to take a lot of the topics that we have discussed here at 52 Living Ideas and turn them into how we would actually use them in everyday life. So to make them more practical, we study some very philosophical, abstract works. So sometimes, in order to make it actionable, that's what we envision this meetup. So we've actually had several meetups based on, just even what we put in our bodies and in different people's life experiences and how they've actually overcome certain adversities. So that's the objective of the meetup itself. So this is an interesting topic. I had not known much about it until today. So I think it's important to have some historical context if we're going to actually truly understand what Ikigai is and the evolution of it and what it is today and what it was in the 14th century. Now, in the 14th century, it was mostly in Japan used as a way as a reminder for people for what their purpose was in society. Essentially, it was a very hierarchical society, so that people's roles would actually be very important. So it almost became like reminding people what their role was, and that was their purpose, and so that they actually were fulfilling their duties, almost like a duty ethic, I would say. But then there was obviously, this is an interesting transition that it made around the industrialization age, and I'm not sure exactly of the year, where it went from more the social roles to the individual roles, to the personal skills. So that's where it starts to morph into something very different. And this is important to know because when we're doing the actual practices of Ikigai, that you understand the social elements as well as the individual. And so it also kind of went from there to from the individual to what is the meaning of life in general. It starts to ask some of the really deep questions or tries to get to the heart of them. So the framework that has already been discussed a little bit was how one loves, one is, what one is good at, what the world needs, and what one can be paid for. And I'll come back to those as a framework. But before I go to that, I actually want to come to a very important foundational concept within Ikigai. And so again, I'm just learning this today. So this is something I if anybody has any corrections, I welcome them. And I'm also looking to learn from your feedback. But some of the sources that I had come across said the sources or objects that bring value or meaning to life. That's one part of two fundamental concepts in Ikigai. The second one is a feeling that one's life has value or meaning because the existence of its own source or object. So this is actually a very important point. What it's basically saying is that you're looking at the external things that you enjoy, and the internal things are the why and why you enjoy those things. So, for example, with sources or objects that bring you value and meaning that are outside of life, or outside of that are external, I should say. They may include hobbies, work, creative pursuits, friends, time with friends and family, your ambitions, and your caught, like essentially, what your long-term goals are. But then there's the introspective work that actually goes on. where you're looking more internally as to why you're choosing the direction that you're choosing. And so from there, it's basically you're starting to look at where do you get personal satisfaction and why do you get personal satisfaction from that particular area. So, and I just got a direct message here. So, okay, I will send them later. Okay. Anyway, so these are two foundational, and they're on the wiki page actually. So yeah, it's not too difficult. Now, if you take that as the internal and the external, then the next part will make a little bit more sense. And essentially that there are three categories that sit on top of that. And those three categories are external sources of Ikigai, internal feeling of Ikigai, and interdependence. And these three things, or I'm sorry, let me come back to that. The social Ikigai, the non-social Ikigai, and the anti-social Ikigai. And so just to explain those concepts just a little bit briefly, this is kind of like the discernment process that you use in order to determine some of the things that I was just talking about. So if I can find the one page that I need actually to, okay. So the social Ikigai is basically how you can foster connections with others, encourage people to be responsible, and you live in social harmony with the rest of society. And so you're basically seeing what your role is in society and how you relate to society. Now, the non-social Ikigai is important as it recognizes the individual and self-fulfillment that is independent of societal approval and involvement, which means the external sources that you live in, you're really kind of questioning them. Is that's what you're influencing you? Is that, what is something that is impacting the decisions you're making, so that you're really aligning with your values and not necessarily society's values? And then there's the antisocial Ikigai, which I was skeptical when I come across this. And if I had to do it again, I would just draw this all out because really they all fit together as a diagram very nicely. But if I were to show you this, you get lost. But anyway, so with that, it's the antisocial Ikigai is essentially typically it encourages critical thinking and fundamental changes in society, and that it says the term is to imply a pursuit or of purposes that in conflict with societal norms or expectations. While antisocial typically has negative connotations, in this context, it might highlight the importance of challenging prevailing norms, encouraging critical thinking, and fostering change in society. So that's the antisocial Ikigai. Now, again, you could start to see how this all fits together. And if ideally, I would have drawn these out for you to make it a little bit more clear. So these are the ways that you can start to, the tools that you can start to use as to really discern what is most important to you. So coming back to what the 4 areas now, which are, these are modern concepts. These are not original concepts that were actually used with back in the 14th century and even in the early 20th century. So what you love, this aspect focuses on your passions, the things that deeply interest you. It's about your understanding what activities or areas make you feel excited and fulfilled. So that is what you love. What you're good at. The element involves your skills and talents. It's important to identify what you excel at, as this can guide you towards a career where you can leverage your strengths. And we've talked about that in a number of different ways. The Ray Dalio meetups, we actually talked about that. The importance of actually knowing your strengths so that you can complement your weaknesses. And that's an interesting connection that I was actually thinking of while I was going over this. There's the other one that is, it's on the practical side, which I can appreciate, which is what you can get paid for. The part of the Ikigai recognizes the practical need to earn a living. It's about finding a way to monetize your passions and skills, ensuring financial stability. Ultimately, you're doing something of value. You're providing something of value to society that they're willing to pay for. But it's aligned with your values and what you enjoy. It's not necessarily just something that you're doing just to have a job. So that's where you can kind of derive that meaning. And what the world needs. And I like this element because it's a pro-social component to it. So what the world needs to componentize your career to the broader needs of society. It asks to consider how your work can contribute to the world, addressing social, environmental, or other global issues.
Yeah, Joe, I think a lot of people have watched or read this. I think we should use the opportunity.
I'll finish it. But what the other part of it is that it's once you actually have kind of gone through that process and identified those things, you can kind of start to align your values and your actions, and you can take steps to actually change your life. Now, finally, I'll just go over really quickly, and it would be really interesting to hear, since we've covered other philosophies of life, other approaches. What does it mean we did a values clarification exercises using Stoicism, and what does it mean to live a eudaimonic life? What is that? How does that compare to contrast to Ikigai? And I also think it's really important that we look at the negative sides of Ikigai, because there are some negative sides, in my opinion, in the sense that it doesn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily distinguish between positive and negative motivations. That's the one thing that I would say. So when you're identifying what your values are, what you're going to pursue, whether that is positive or negative is really important. The other is that it's also used in corporations quite a bit. And in that sense, it may be aligning more with the corporation's objectives, the work that you're doing versus the actual, your actual values. So I think there are also those 10 areas that I could go through, and I'm not going to go through right now, but I think those would be interesting to explore, because a lot of them align with what we've covered here with Seneca specifically, on the shortness of life, with taking it slow, just some fundamental basic, don't fill your stomach, temperance, the idea of how to reconnect with nature itself. We've talked quite a bit with that with Lewis Sullivan. How to live in the present moment. I can give you a lot of good reasons as to why that's so important. So I think it's it's an interesting approach. I think there's a lot of positives in identifying your values. and really kind of trying to then take action and change your life to pursue what makes you most happy, without ignoring the social part. But I do think it's important to keep in mind the societal, the social, the individual, the external, and the internal work that is actually done in order to make this all happen. And these are all different parts of Ikigai. Now, I just gave the 50,000 foot level. I just learned it today. So that's the best I could do for now, but I would like to open it up for questions now, and or comments as to what you feel are some of the positives and negatives with Ikigai. Some part of it actually that doesn't talk too much about rationality, which is interesting. Maybe any comments on that? I didn't see any. And just how it can actually benefit you in your life. And then maybe we can come back if we have time, and we can compare it to some ideas of eudaimonia, because or human flourishing within other philosophies. And the reason I say that might be interesting is because they include some higher level ideals, where this is very much personal. It's more descriptive, I would say. The Hellenistic philosophies are much more descriptive, prescriptive. Prescriptive. Whereas the Ikigai is much more descriptive. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Ikigai. I think it's a valuable tool, but I really don't understand this concept well. And I would love to hear what everybody has to say, because I know we have a lot of smart people in here.
All right. Shurikant, if you're there, can you do me a favor and unlock the chat?
Sure.
Um,
I'm doing that right now.
Thank you. So if anyone has any questions or comments, the way we do things for those of you that are new here is we type exclamation point when we want to speak. So while people are lining up, I will unmute everyone, but we do ask, because of the number of people, that we type exclamation point and we do not talk out loud. And I will call on people.
Yeah, I think it's also good because we study so many different philosophy in life. If you compare with other concepts we talked about at 5 to Living Idea before. Yeah.
That's the whole objective here, is to make these connections. So if you have another philosophy that really kind of you think maps in nicely with Ikigai, or then it would be interesting to explore that.
So, and I just want to put the question out there right now while people are lining up. If you have used Ikigai, we would like to invite you to describe your understanding of Ikigai and what you think. So, with that said, we have first, I hope I'm not mispronouncing this. We have Romana, and then we have David R. and Paul and Yasuhiko. Actually, Yasuhiko, we're going to allow you to go first. So let me just unmute everyone. Give me 1 second.
And Ocean.
Yeah, let Yasuhiko go first.
All right, so everyone can unmute. So Yasuhiko, feel free.
I don't hear him. He's still muted.
No, he's still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can.
Yes. So it was excellent introduction for Joe, who just read this for the first time. It was quite an amazing exposition. since I'm from the culture where the term was created, I just want to give you, just for your information, some linguistic background. And it gives you maybe a sense of how the Japanese people use this word. It is not a recondite philosophical concept. It is a felt sense, which is a strength and weakness. Because if you don't have a comprehensive philosophical structure behind, when something happens in your life, you may lose Ikigai. So that's a negative aspect. But at the same time, positive aspect, it is really felt sense. And the Ikigai is combination of two words. And when you read in Japanese, we use two characters. One is a kanji character, and the other one is hiragana Japanese character. And we use kanji character in two ways. Meaning of kanji, pronounced in Japanese, and meaning Japanese using the kanji Chinese character as a sound. So iki, when you have a kanji character iki, the kanji used, Chinese character used, means life. And iki is breath. I is breath, iki is breath. So when we say prayer is inori, ikinori, which is a Tao of life. Very interesting. But anyway, so iki is to breathe, to a breath, and to live. Really visceral sense of living. And gai is from kai, iki, kai put together become ikigai. Gai is a Japanese word, and then the two Chinese characters used to describe it. Now, the two Chinese characters used for this is only sound, used for only sound. At the same time, each character has meaning or meanings. So they could have chosen different kanji character to use the same sound, but they chose these two characters. So kai means worth, effect, benefit, one of those, depending on the context, those words. And the kanji Chinese character used for ka or gai, ka, is the samurai armor. You know, when in the West you have a knight's armor. In Japan we have a samurai armor. So which actually contains your being. Kai. This is one of the many characters used to describe beauty. But this I has beauty in the sense of very wet, not dry. And samurai armor has, they are all well oiled. So they use this word to describe this kai. So Ikigai has been used for centuries. I didn't know it was 14th century. But this word was actually made conscious by a book by Dr. Kamiya Mieko Kamiya.
Right.
She died in 1979, but the book was published in 1980, and it became a bestseller. And I happened to be in India when this book was published. So I didn't know until I came to the United States in California. I used to go to Kinokuniya bookstore, and then I saw, Dr. Kamiya's book, Ikigai ni tsuite, the bestseller section. That's when I learned about this book. And most of the Westerners who talks about Ikigai probably came across this concept through this. I did not listen to your presentation here, the something we are supposed to watch. I'm sorry, I didn't have time. But I have seen people on the Facebook a lot using this Ikigai with a Venn diagram was 4. That is not the Japanese concept. It is a westernized interpretation of Ikigai, which is quite good, but it is not how originally we conceived of the term Ikigai. And all those 4 circles are not necessary for you to have Ikigai in the sense that Japanese people use. But probably, if you have all those 4 circles and places Ikigai at the center, it is most comprehensive. So it will eliminate the weakness of Ikigai. And things happen in life when we get depressed and we lose purpose. The purpose, a person who has real Ikigai can move on even when he or she encounters a tragedy. The Ikigai is because it's a felt sense. It gives you something like a courage to live in the face of anything. So it is good to talk about Ikigai philosophically, but it is very, very important to really come back to the original sense. Unless Ikigai, some philosophical concept or understanding, become felt sense and live in your heart, it is not Ikigai. Until then, it is a philosophical concept.
Can I ask you just one brief question?
Please, yes.
Yeah, so the fact that there isn't necessarily a ethical system that underpins it, does that make it difficult to say it can be a complete philosophy of life?
Yeah, it is neither Buddhism nor Shintoism. It is just Japanese folk wisdom.
Okay.
Originally,
yeah, that's
yes, it is a folk wisdom, and so you see, Japanese culture used to be, and probably now is still, is very, very group oriented. So this duty in society is a heavy thing. Also class society. So you are born into a particular class and you have a duty for society, and duty becomes heavy on your shoulder. Now, Ikigai is like an individual response to this, so that making a duty something more personal and meaningful, so that you don't burn out.
right.
Your duty becomes something more like a mission or even a passion. So it is a way of dealing with the social pressure, which is extremely high in Japan, was high in Japan. So it originally comes from the individual search for meaning or worth for life, in the social context where they didn't have too much choice and freedom. So it's a responsible response to being, or as some philosophers will say, you are thrown into this particular existence, and how you responsibly react to this and make something out of your life is the original impetus for searching for Ikigai.
Excellent.
Even now, I think so that Venn diagram depicts that some aspect of it, no question about that. But it was not originally conceived that way.
Yeah, there's anyway, I'll just say there's there's an article in The Economist this week that just covers exactly what you said.
Yes,
It says, how, yeah. So I'll put it in the chat here in a moment. But go ahead, Ebony.
So
Uh,
just wanted to add to your excellent, introduction from a
Thank
Japanese
you. It was the
perspective.
best I could. It was the best I could. If I was able to draw it out, I wish it would have made a whole lot more sense. But because you would have seen the foundations of it and the evolution of the time periods as to how it changed,
Yes.
and how it went from the social to the individual, from the individual to the internal and external assessment, and then back up to the social. So it has this interplay between the two, and we've discussed that here. Very important is the idea of it both relating to society, but while maintaining your personal integrity, so that and your own purpose. That has been one of the more interesting evolution aspects of it, especially just how societies themselves actually evolve.
Yes.
So I think that was the most fascinating part for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasuhiko. Up next, so just to let everybody know what we're doing here is that we're choosing people to go first that know about. I'm gonna mispronounce this. Joe, help.
Ikigai.
Ikigai. Thank you. So up next we're gonna let Ocean go, and then I have Ramana, David R, Paul S, and Geet.
Hi, is it me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, good to join. It's good to hear Joe's presentation as well as everybody. Jen's presentation. I really like I can tell Jen is really go-getter, and I like the spirit of manifesting what you passionate about, and becoming what Tony Robbins is one of my first gurus, and he talks about it a lot. But talks about how the movie Secret or the Law of Attraction becomes really real if you have a clear goal and put it into action. But anyways, yeah, I came from Japan, and I was born in Japan originally, and so I'm familiar with it. Though I have to be honest with you, I'm not familiar with the historical background. I studied in 13th century. I have no knowledge of it. But to me, Ikigai is simply your deepest passion and deepest meaning in your life. So it doesn't. It can be anything. They're collecting the certain specific bugs, or playing the musical instrument, or becoming a great swordman or whatever. Ikigai simply means having just listen to your heart and finding out your deepest passion, deepest meaning. When there are hundreds of superficial, unimportant desires we try to achieve on a daily basis, but that's not the Ikigai. Ikigai is listen to your heart, the deepest part of your heart, and finding out your deepest desire, deepest meaning in life, deepest passion. And the Steve Jobs, I think he's one of the greatest creative entrepreneur existed in human history. Gave us the iPhone and the Apple company, but he said, just do what you love. That's the only way you can persevere all those tough times, because to achieve your goals, that can be extremely tough. The only way you can persevere is that you do what you love the most. Then you can persevere all the life challenges. So I totally agree with that. So that's all I have to say at this moment. If you have any questions, as a people who was born from the culture, I'll be happy to answer any question you might have about Ikigai or Japanese culture or whatever. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and this is actually, I think, really quickly, Ocean, that you hit on something very important that I would like to follow up on. You talked about the idea of why, essentially why we do something in the first place. But this is one of the things that I tried to bring up during the discussion, when it was whether it would be a positive motivation versus a negative motivation. because the reason I say positive motivation is the positive motivation gives you resilience. And that's what you were talking about just a moment ago. The resilience factor is what Ikigai can offer. However, it's also the negative motivations are possibly a result of fear. And so that you're acting out of fear, in which case that would actually be a negative aspect of it. But it doesn't say, from my understanding, either whether it be the positive or negative emotions about that.
I want to chime in.
Yasuhiko, and I think Yasuhiko would like to speak too.
Okay. Yeah. Well, from my understanding, let me quickly answer to that, Joe. So, from my understanding, Ikigai is as simply like energy, it's neutral. You can use the nuclear power to provide the cheap energy, or destroy the cities. Ikigai simply means your deepest passion. So I know that a few people are really psychopaths and raping and killing kids. That might be their deformed, sick passion in life. That's their Ikigai, and I have no judgment. I tend to despise it, but if that happened to be that person's Ikigai or passion is to just have sex with an 8-year-old, I mean, I cannot stop them because they're mentally ill. I mean, you cannot cure mental illness, so there's neutral, there's no morality attached to Ikigai. To my understanding, it just means your deepest motivation, deepest passion, deepest.
Ocean, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm just gonna, and I think the difference would be with that person though, would be that it doesn't help the world, so it wouldn't be Ikigai if I'm understanding that correctly. That would have no.
Yeah, that's one factor.
That's harming the world, so I don't think that's Ikigai at all.
Yeah.
Maybe we have a different understanding, me and whomever advocates this concept. Yeah, but that, I'm sharing my. I came from this,
I hate
Japan.
to,
So I just
normally I don't like to interrupt people's opinion, but I think if we're talking about molesting kids, I think we have to stop the conversation right here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Also, go ahead. I'm just sharing my understanding. That's all. That's all.
Also, I think Joe mentioned about the fear. I think when you have love, there's no fear. I think people have fear when they're not. This love and fear don't coexist in a human. So people have fear when they don't have love. If you're full of love, you don't have fear. That's my understanding. That's why I don't see there's negative part of this passion. When you have passion doing something, I don't see there anything negative about it. And also, like we all see Obama, he has passion to create this powerful tool, but people may use it in a wrong way, to damage people. But I don't think it's his fault. Technology developed in certain ways. It's more the politician use him. Anyway, move on.
I let Yasuhiko chime in because I think that he has a lot of knowledge on this. And I admit, I don't know a lot about this. This is just a thought that it was value neutral.
Well, it is not just pure energy, because consciousness is attached to this, and also value is attached to this. When you have the sense of living, life that is worthy of living, that worthy connect to value. So definitely a person's value reflect on a person's Ikigai. And I do, in my personal use of the term, I do not connect this with negativity too much. It is fundamentally life affirming and positive. At the same time, there is a negative element to this. And as I said, since it is essentially a feeling or sense of sense and feeling, it does not have a deep, for most people, deep philosophical foundation. And therefore, when their values are challenged, and or when values dissolve and collapse, they lose Ikigai unless they can rebuild it on the basis of some form of philosophical inquiry into themselves. So to me, that is the weakness. Actually, it is a weakness of most of Japanese ancient Japanese ideas. It doesn't have a real fundamental philosophical foundation. And Ikigai is one of those things. So, it is important that, Joe, you are deconstructing this concept and really go in an intellectual direction. So long as we don't get lost in it, don't come back to the sense of it, it is important to have that kind of a discussion. So therefore, Stoicism and all those, they have a wider philosophical foundation in which to talk about Ikigai. And when you go into Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, where there is a system philosophy, that's a different story. But in a normal or average Japanese people's thinking, Ikigai is feeling. It does not go beyond unexamined system value. And that is weakness.
Okay.
And personally, one more thing about negativity. You see, there have been a lot of wars on the planet. And in the 14th century, it was still the time of the war, a lot of war. And war, it basically is a tribal. So your Ikigai is, serving your family. At the same time, your enemy destroys your family, the revenge can become Ikigai. In that context, it can become negative. But it's also based on fundamental fidelity and loyalty to your own tribe and family. So in that sense, and in the samurai culture, Ikigai is also shinigai. Shino is to die. So that which makes your life worth living is that which makes that for which you can die, something like that. So living and dying come together, and that which makes it worse transcend those duality. And so 14th, 15th century, actually 13th, 14th, 15th century, enormous number of wars going on, Sengoku Jidai and stuff like that. So in that sense, we can say there's a negative element.
Thank you so much, Yasuhiko. I very much appreciate that. And I do have a tendency to go down in the weeds, so I appreciate the pulling me back from the doldrums.
So up next, we have, who has been patiently waiting, so thank you. Ramada, David R., Paul S., Geet, and Ocean. And if anyone else has any questions or comments, you can type exclamation point in the chat. And if somebody hasn't spoken, we will be giving them preference. Just so FYI. Ramana.
Yes. I came here, Japanese culture has a very unique combination. Even though underlying philosophy is Hinduism and all those stuff, one thing that it attracted me was how do they convert this service and philosophy or passion or anything into, and also survival, and how to make a living out of it. That is a very interesting, because I have a podcast. I do healthcare podcast. And in that podcast, what I did was, one of the things I came across very surprising is a Teruko Mujishima, her name. She is a Periokipo. Maybe I'm saying all the Japanese words wrong, but it's a time banking, was started in Japan. Time banking is such an attractive thing right now during this kind of economy. It is a very powerful weapon. So time banking is what they do is, if I go and see older people, or that if I see younger people come and go and see the older people, the time they spend with the older couple, they deposit that time in a bank. So somebody else come there and give a tutoring for them for free. It is such a powerful concept. It caught me. It is very interesting. I want to understand. It is such a, I have 2 master's degrees. And I came with a healthcare background, and I thought I wanted to make a lot of money. I made a lot of money in the beginning, and then I lost money. What happened was I wanted to go with my passion. My passion was I wanted to do podcasting and healthcare podcasting. It was because you don't make money. You don't make money. So that's why I came. I I I I immersed myself and I lost money with the pennies that I have. I put together and I did I'm doing the podcast, and it's extremely successful. I got a great reviews, but but the thing is that I want to do the next step. The first speaker was telling the Japanese culture is a Japanese thing. How do you convert them into the passion with the survival and money? That's one thing I lack, and so probably I want to learn from that Ikigai, whatever it is. That is interesting to me. That philosophical concept is that service and then passion that make it a survival. That is very important because a lot of people who get lost in survival in the passion and they will be broke. So I'm one of them in that sense. And I made a lot of money, and now I deal with a lot of doctors. I work with a lot of doctors watch my podcast, but still I have that missing piece. That's why I want to learn. I want to get the tools to learn how to do that missing piece. Guy or whoever can help me to move that to the next level. I would be fascinating. So time banking is the one really made me to look at your meetup, because time banking is such a powerful concept that I give you an example of time time banking, how it worked in the United States. A doctor called me one day, and then he told me that I have a two patients. They don't have the one patient doesn't have a ride to come to the office. In particular, Georgia. I'm from Georgia. Georgia and Alabama is not easy to find these rural areas. Very tough. So what this did, that is a very amazingly. I told him the time banking concept. Use the time banking concept. Let some other patient bring that patient to the office. Deposit that time in the banking, and then you go back, and then other people do that time different way, uh, paint their paint their walls or whatever thing other people do. It doesn't need to be exactly same person. It's not a barter system. It's a little bit, but one of the most powerful thing I like that about that time banking system is that it is nothing to do. You're a doctor, you're two masters, PhD, doesn't matter. They have to spend the same amount of time on each and every one. That is what the humanity's common goal. And I love to learn from you guys the tools that is required for that next level. That is Ikigai. You're all talking about. I think some people are talking something nice, but something are going in tangent. Is a philosophy that is the fundamental philosophy is that you take a abstract service and then convert them into survival. Also combine them. That Venn diagram somebody showed that's very interesting. But that kind of a thing you have to
Thank,
do. You know,
uh,
you give that philosophy and then Venn diagram.
so
Then it's working.
thank
That's
you
what I'm
very much.
looking.
Yeah, we have a lot of people now in the queue, so we definitely want to get to them. So David is next. Thank you very much, and I'll come back to your comments.
Okay, hi. Yeah, I really liked what Yasuhiko was talking about. I think it's a little bit subtle. It's not do what you love or figure out what you love in life and then you somehow imagine it and help society. I think it's a little more subtle. I think I think it's more of a psychological resilience you can obtain through doing your duty for society. It's kind of like it's a energy, or it's a psychological resilience coming from your place in society, and you do it well. And the fact that you're doing whatever the job is, and it might not be something you were born, I'd love to be a garbage collector or something, but you're a very good garbage collector. You feel that you're helping society, and it's through the helping of society and being part of society that you gain your own personal resilience. I think it's
I agree with that.
I think Japanese society, as was mentioned, is a very collectivist society. And I think this is kind of a collectivist psychology, that by doing what is valuable to society, and no matter if it's a floor sweeper on the factory floor, but doing it well and feeling that by doing it well, you are contributing to your society. And through that, you feel resilient, you feel good, because you're helping everyone in this, I think in the West here, we tend to come at it from, it's all about me, what do I love? And then the rest of the world has to fit in. And I think this whole idea of Ikigai is much more the other way. It's a sort of a personal resilience, but it's through your place in society.
You bring up one of the most important parts, that I think, is that finding meaning in every task that you do is actually critical to Ikigai. And it's critical to a lot of different philosophies. The Stoics would say arete. I mean, that it would be excellence. But you have to see your role overall in society in order to do that. So it isn't do what you feel, but it's also encouraging you to identify the underlying value as to why you're doing something in the first place. And that underlying value is not just the job and how it fits in society. It could be how it relates back to your home life, your family, and everything around you. So this is an Aristotelian approach that we did actually with value clarification exercises. Where, why do you work? Well, you work for money. Well, why do you want money? Well, to support your family. Well, maybe the underlying value is your family. But then you start to see the purpose in everything within that. And so that's where and religions will say that you see God in everything. You see God in every act. That's where they come down and say that's their approach. So you're hitting on a major approach.
This is too much of your own interpretation. I think it's
Yeah.
making it more confusing than it needs to be, or at least you're bringing in too much more.
Well, you're saying you could see as a trash man, like you're saying a trash man sees his purpose, right?
But it's not.
I want to say, yeah, because I think contribute to society is one of the key elements. Like they pay for you because they only pay you if you contribute their value. They won't pay you when you do your own enjoyment. That's why a lot of people have hard time to get paid. You have fun, that's fine. But if you don't bring value to other people, they won't pay for you. So I think, but I don't believe sweeping the floor, unless you love sweeping the floor, is the passion. I think the beauty of this, it may not be a philosophy, like I think Joe tried to make it more deeper thinking philosophy. This is more practical method. It's kind of like you find things you love, you find something that contribute to others, you're good, they pay for you. So it's all kind of like more practical way to find a middle ground. Like I love drawing, but I can't be a painter. Maybe I can't afford myself, be a painter, have fun myself. But if I design a building, I do the design, I also contribute to others, they will pay for me. So it's kind of like you have to find this middle ground with everything kind of covered a little bit. That's my understanding.
All right.
Yossi,
I think that David really captured the extremely important aspect of Ikigai, and this, you got it, and positive and negative. Western culture, we are into creating a formula, extremely goal-oriented, and sometimes we lose sight of the substance of it. And the substance that you gain from Ikigai is psychological resilience. As you said, that's beautifully said. And that is such an important aspect. And so the person who has Ikigai is resilient psychologically, and whatever it is that he or she has. And in some way, it is more like a, well, I think it was Calvin, Samuel College said, wisdom is common sense in an uncommon degree. And the people who have found Ikigai has the kind of wisdom which is a refined sense of common sense. That, that's why Ikigai can be understood by anybody around the world without studying philosophy. And that's very important aspect. It's more like a wisdom than knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, up next we have Paul, followed by Geet, and somebody else just put an exclamation point, and Bob, and then Ocean.
Yeah, I like all the discussion. I like the last comment in the chat about pragmatic dimensions, because I can bring to the table a really pragmatic applications, because I got my master's in mental health counseling in the career counseling course. This concept made it in there when you're trying to help someone with career counseling. So that was one of the many courses I took. And then I went in, did my internship, became a therapist, and I have experience applying this concept. So I would teach groups and I would show the Venn diagram, and then I would work with people individually, and I can share some of that experience. And this is a very relevant conversation to all of it. In practice, here's what happens. Well, you say get paid for, but I'm just going to get paid a little bit, but I need more because I want to have a lifestyle where I'm not struggling. Well, what does the world need? Well, what if I just want to have a family? Is that what the world needs? Well, so you quickly get into a slippery slope. So what I learned to do with it, instead of going to the pure beautiful, by the way, thank you, Yasuhiko and others, and others, for that beautiful explanation of its roots. What I kind of learned to do is combine it with other things as a process of discovery for the person. So they're asking the right questions, right? When they go, well, wait, what does it mean making enough money? Now you're forcing them into the values exercise. What does it mean what the world needs? So they're having to come through to those processes of understanding that, which is outside of Ikigai. And then they synthesize that with this structure. And the last thing I want to mention is, I think it does a great disservice that I think is pushed maybe because of the business emphasis that got on this idea that you have to do all in one, that you have to do one thing that's all of that. And I'll give my example of Wes Montgomery, my favorite jazz guitarist, and I'm a jazz guitarist. Wes Montgomery had 7 children and was a welder. Even after he got famous, he just said, well, I gotta, weld so I can play guitar whenever I can. And he was a very happy man. You see pure joy in him at all times. Eventually he stopped welding, I admit that. But the standard concept of Ikigai concept tries to force this concept of you gotta work at what you love. And I just think it's a misuse of it. And I'll stop there. I hope it helps the conversation.
Thank you, Paul. Up next, I have Geet, followed by Ocean. If anyone has any questions. I'm sorry, what?
No, I was just gonna start. I was gonna say thank you for letting me speak, but I'll let you finish.
No, I was just going to say, if anyone has any questions or comments, you can type exclamation point in the chat or raise your hand in Zoom. Go ahead, Geet.
Thank you so much. This discussion is so good. Thank you. I feel blessed to be part of this. So, in my mind, this is what I was thinking. Ikigai to me is the passion that you have for life that keeps you going. So, what I mean by that, life is not easy. There are so many responsibilities, there is work, there are bills to pay, there are relationships, and whatnot. So, to keep going, to continue your duties, you need something that keeps you joyful or that lets you go by with your daily duties happily. To me, that is Ikigai. However, something that I keep thinking and pondering, and maybe Kimura san can add to it, not sure, but I feel like when we were kids, there were so many things that brought us joy. So it was easier to find the ikigai. It was there by default. But as we grow older, or at least in my case, it's harder for me to now even define or find what's my ikigai. What I keep on doing is I have this checklist of things I have to do in my daily life, and I keep meeting that checklist. Sometimes I come across these concepts and then I try to figure out, oh, what brings me joy? But I do not have an answer. And then there are these temporary things that, you can go shopping, you can eat good food, you can do this, that. I am past that point too. So now I keep wondering, what is that inside me that brings me happiness, joy, or that's my passion? And I don't have an answer. So I don't know, Kimura-san, if you could bring some light, how to find that ikigai. What can I do?
Yasuhiko, go.
I,
Feel free to answer that question. So Yasuhiko, you're on mute.
You answered the question. Actually, you answered your own question. He said that tapping the childhood stuff, childhood passion. That's even the most people who are childhood dreams. That is really powerful. You answered your own question actually.
Git, happiness does not depend on what you do. It is how you do what you do. And when we look at how we live our lives, when we are children, we live life in one way. As we grew older, we begin to live our life in a different way. And it is not the activity itself, but how we are engaged in that activity that changed. So if we can go back to the way children are engaged in whatever it is that they are doing, we will be able to find happiness. So, in Christianity, the teaching is be childlike. Nietzsche's famous, metamorphosis from camel to lion to child. And in all of the, ancient teachings, there's an same kind of teaching. You go back to the original innocence of a child. So that, to me, the secret of happiness. And in a way, the ikigai from this perspective is you can find ikigai in anywhere, doing anything. As David was just brilliantly pointing out, the ancient Japanese people, they are born like Indian people. They are born into a certain class, and for the entire life, if you are a farmer, you will be farmer. And so it is not like, what is my, they didn't have any even luxury to think about, what is my passion? No, I mean, you are going to be the farmer the rest of your life. So they found ikigai there. So it is not what they did, but how they did it. And it requires a certain degree of wisdom to be able to find that ikigai that way. So that's my, more than three sentence response to you. Thank you.
Thank you so
very
much.
worthwhile.
Thank you so much. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but thank you so much for sharing the wisdom. Appreciate it.
Okay, so up next, I have Ocean followed by Jing.
Yeah, I agree. Up until recent years, Japan is a very collective society. The idea of individualism, is not part of their culture. That's part of the reason I came here. It's a great United States of America because it values individuality. I'm a very individual person. But anyways, yeah, I agree with some people. If you're making millions and millions of dollars, but you can still don't live in ikigai, or you may not feel. You may feel depressed, even though if you're making billions of dollars, you may not feeling meaning in life, or you may be a garbage collector, and you may manage your emotion to have some meaning in collecting garbage, and if that's the case, you are indeed living your ikigai. So I'm not going to argue with that. But though I have to say again, this is neutral. It's not morally, socially, morally right or wrong. You know, if you take a look at any tragedy in history by many dictators like Pol Pot or Stalin or something, I mean, they didn't try to create a badness in the world, destructive in the world. They had ikigai purpose to create a perfect, communistic utopia, and by killing, thousands, hundreds of millions of people, and maybe, Japan did the same thing. I mean, for maybe some Japanese leader during the World War II had ikigai or passion to expand the Japanese empire and killed a lot of innocent Chinese people and Korean people and so forth. Is it bad or good? It depends on how you look at things. So I'm not morally, I'm against the, ikigai means you are doing a right for the society. Depends on how you look at things. In the eyes of the Stalin, killing millions of people to create a utopia is the right thing. But in most people's eyes, it's horrific. So you can't really judge what's good or bad for the society. Depends on how you look at it. But ikigai simply means that your deepest passion. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ocean. And I apologize, Bob. I did skip you. So you're up next, Bob.
That's okay. I am really struck by this word or concept, ikigai, as a Japanese term as opposed to a Western term. I think it was mentioned earlier that in the somehow did it arise out of the 14th century? There were a lot of wars going on. Well, I don't know what those wars were. I wonder what they were, but that is not the case today. That I imagine in Japan. Japan is a unusual culture to me in the sense that it is a monoculture. So if ikigai has to do with being passionate about something, individual passion does not it would coincide with the cultural passion. The entire Japanese culture is if you have experienced some things in World War II, you will find out that there is for a Japanese person, there's enormous penalty if you deviate from the cultural values in Japan, World War II. Maybe I won't go into it, but I just want to contrast this Japanese concept with the Western culture. Our culture in the West is I see as is quite different, a melting pot, but it isn't a very smooth. It's kind of how would you say, a modular or a combination or a pot of many cultures, and we tend to clash with each other, and we fight to have our individuality. We may have a passion as individuals, but we don't have the passion of a unified culture that the Japanese have, unless you want to sing the national anthem, which I don't know, doesn't quite do it. So anyway, I see the ikigai is a naturally arising Japanese concept, difficult for a Westerner to understand.
I want to make a point, an important point here. Is what is going on in the United States in the Western culture is really you're sleepwalking into human extinction. The greed, the capitalism, the technology platforms, particularly, what they created is a pyramid cycle. If siphoning the money to the top, doesn't matter whether it's not by race. It's nothing to do with the race. It is something to do with the philosophy, Western philosophy adopted it with capitalism. I'm a capitalist, but this kind of a capitalism is a dangerous one. You're siphoning the money to the top by using a platform. Platform is a pyramid scheme. So what is left over? There will be 4 or 5 people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. The rest of them are going to be touched and undergrounded in the whole process. That is the danger of this Western individualism. That's what you're saying. if they don't understand the society participation, that's what I'm learning. That's why I came here. Is that powerful? That Teruko, you need to read her story. She came to learn to be a doctor here, and then she was learning suing in 1940s, and she went back and started the time banking. It taught me so powerful way. Time banking is that nowadays you don't it's a more than a part of the system. It is just either you're a doctor, a CEO, or a janitor. If a janitor wants to learn a calculus, you could teach him. That is a passion that somebody can give it time. Doctor can give it time, a professor can give it time. So it is just is a participation. We have to emphasize that culture. The first person, G. Phone 12, started it. They take the service and then convert them into survival and the part of the all duty as a part of the society. That is the key. And
Yes.
that
Thank
is what, and we're going a lot of tangent ways, but that is the one
Yeah, can you raise your hand when you talk? Everybody's waiting. Yeah, I think it'd be for our meeting. Usually we raise our hands. We don't just jump in. Anyway, so I agree with you. For the interesting thing about what you call the internet, the international world. Actually, it's not like what we thinking. We bring this more like communist, not people share the information, but actually become more extreme. We see the corporate actually take advantage of resource around the world. The rich get richer and poor get poorer. So which is opposite what people thinking. And the internet too, the YouTuber, you have a few people super rich. Most people are broke because only the few people, they attract all the attention and they keep pushing the same thing to the people. Then the people on the bottom, they get nothing. So that's what's happening. So how do we change it? It's idea, it's something to discuss. But this is not our meeting's purpose. So I think I want to go back to our meeting, the Ikigai. Actually, the reason I raised my hand because let me finish. Because I want to say what Paul was mentioned. I know Paul is still here, but anyway, Paul talking about it's kind of forcing the idea of Ikigai. I don't think Ikigai means you have to combine the whole thing. Then that's your career. But I like your idea about exploring. It's a starting point. You try to explore. What you, and it's kind of like it's not the people like Van Gogh. He never marketing his painting. He never make a dime, but he become world famous. Afterwards, I really think the real genius, they are ahead of time. They never get compensated because they're so advanced. So this is more for the common people. I see. Like if you want to make a good living, you find the middle ground, kind of balance the whole thing. But so it's but I don't think it's forcing people to do anything. It's just a guideline. If you want to live a reasonable, happy life, this is some guideline they propose. That's my understanding.
Okay. Up next, I have Joe, followed by Paul.
Yeah, I just have maybe a brief question for the group more than anything, and I outlined the internal and external, and basically the why you're doing it, where you're doing the introspective work. That's part of Ikigai, and then the other part is the how you're doing it. But that's only two pieces of a framework, and I was wondering, actually, is it that you just come up with your own? And Yasuhiko might know this better than anyone. You come up with your own principles that you're going to be governing yourself by as a framework, because it's not enough just to know how and why. You have to have kind of something where that's guiding your actions. Or is that, does that sound about right? And if so, do you come up with your own principles based on your own personal Ikigai?
Are you asking me the question?
Yeah.
Oh,
if you
okay.
could.
So before I respond to your question, it is very interesting to see some concept arising in particular culture, particular language, and then it is translated or transported into different culture, and it begin to evolve. I have seen the evolution or devolution of sushi in the United States, That's something you eat, and they make things that Japanese would never even think about making. And at the same time, some are good. So it is important to understand the original. Then we don't need to stick to that particular original in a different culture, because language and culture are paradigm. And when you move something into a different paradigm, it is in a different context. And what is universal? In Japanese, Ikigai, and if you say in English, reason for living, or what makes my life worth living, is that which David identified beautifully. The kind of wisdom or understanding of life's purpose that makes you psychologically resilient. So it is not just an intellectual concept. So in the Western culture or in American culture, we think about the meaning of life. And if you come up with an answer, it needs to have that felt sense element that contribute to your psychological resilience. So no matter what happens in life, today, as Jeannie was saying, people are all broke. I can totally identify with that one. So we are, we are having a hard time. But if you have the Ikigai, which is like a real deep, fair sense, that gives me the resilience to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is very important, I think. So, we can intellectualize this forever. But, we have to ask this question. Okay, now we learn the word Ikigai, and it is something like that which makes my life worth living. What is it for me? And does it give me the kind of courage and strength so that, I can continue living no matter what happens in my life? That is a very important question. And it is beyond, just asking the definition of Ikigai. Having said that, in the context of Japanese culture, Ikigai was more like what I responded to, Geet, I think. A very strict class society where people didn't have the luxury of asking, what is my passion in life? So they found Ikigai within the confinement of their life. So they found freedom in confinement. So that is a Japanese, and it is possible for all of us to do that. Now, in a Western culture, I think we have this, like you, Joe, my friend Shrikant, many of the people here, you have been studying and expanding your knowledge of philosophy. So I think you can actually base your Ikigai on your philosophy. Thing is, unless Ikigai becomes your felt sense that gives you a psychological resilience, it is simply an intellectual exercise. And that, to me, is the most important element. So you can accept, whatever religion or philosophy that you grew up with, and then you can find Ikigai there. Or we don't have that kind of option anymore. So we have to really, think and build our value systems and philosophy for ourselves to the degree that it becomes beyond thinking, it becomes feeling. Yeah. And it's almost like the living philosophy, the concept need to become again, a thought need to become life. And philosophy, Western philosophy has lost that kind of power, and we need to regain this. That's my.
Thank you for that. No, that was excellent. That was excellent. how it can be integrated into other frameworks, and how it, yes, that is that answers my question. So thank you.
Thank you, Yasuhiko. Up next, I have Paul, followed by Ocean.
Yeah, to pick up on various threads here and all these wonderful observations. This idea of resilience, every culture and era has to find an answer for the search for meaning. I'll just call it the search for meaning. And as in Viktor Frankl's book, I mean, that we get resilience from a sense of meaning. And they're tied together. And in terms of what the 14th century people did, I've learned about tonight, and what the Venn diagram of modern Western world does, it's putting a system following, Joe, did we ever do Kant in 52? Following Immanuel Kant's idea of the categorical imperative that create a system and live by a system such that if everyone adopted that system, we'd have a beautiful world. I just kind of paraphrased it. So that's where Gene brings in the what the world needs. But then it has to be interpreted in the context of a culture. But I got from your earlier talk about the original origins that the same idea in roles of Japanese culture, there was an attempt to put a framework in place that was consistent with such that all the strati of culture could adopt it, and it would work to keep everything coherent. And now we're doing that with Ikigai here and deciding what does what the world need means. And to some extent, it's an individual decision. And to some extent, it's influenced by this. You can't come to conclusions like Stalin came to and say you're doing what the world means. So I'm just tying together the concept of resilience, the need for search for meaning, and then a context for thinking about it and exploration that works for everyone in the culture.
Thank you, Paul. Up next, I have Ocean.
Yeah, Yashiko's saying is partly true. What I'm saying, what I think coincide with what I said initially, that if you're doing, because there was no upward mobility, because it was Japan up until recent years, Japan was a class society. You have no choice of changing your crop. So you are born to the farming, then for the rest of your life, you're forced to do the farming, but you can find joy, passion, meaning in doing the simple farming. That's Ikigai. And again, some people might manage to have Ikigai or meaning in what they're doing, and some people are miserable. I personally know miserable farmers when I went to the country areas in Japan. So if you thought what he's saying is that all the Japanese people who are doing the job that they're not necessarily loving, manage to. Everyone has the Ikigai. That's wrong. That's wrong. Some people are miserable, and some people have Ikigai. So I just wanted to clarify that distinction. Thank you very much.
I didn't say that, by the way. Please don't misunderstand me.
No, you didn't say it, but you had created the impression. So that's why I wanted to clarify.
Thank you. So I think that's all the speakers that we have that wanted to speak.
Jane just, I think, has...
Yeah, I want to say something. Yeah, I'd like to share a story. I think it's interesting have the perspective Yakisiku mentioned about, how to get resilient and actually find meaning doing different things. It reminded me of a Chinese story, like there's 3 people, they're laying the brick, and one is miserable, he said, I'm laying the brick. The second one said, I'm building a wall. The third one is very excited. He said, I'm building a palace. So that story tells what Paul mentioned, the meaning, why it's so important to have a meaning in our life, because you could literally do exactly the same thing, have totally different psychology and happiness, because you have different, you don't understand, understand the meaning of your action. When you connect that action to a bigger picture or something meaningful, you can have much transformed experience. doing exact the same action. So I think that's actually reminding me about this story. So for the Ikigai, I think you can create your Ikigai even do in most modern things, but like you take care of the people, but think about, how you contribute humanity, for example, you find the meaning and then you're happy to doing all this. So I think that's actually another way. It's not like you have to do this great passion, there's different way to achieve it.
Thank you, Jing. So now I think what we said after the outline is that the next thing we're going to do is go into questions.
Yeah, and I mean, are there any questions or anything that possibly where you see Ikigai either in your life, but also how it relates to some of the other ideas that we've actually covered here at 52 Living Ideas. Now, very modern form has 10 different rules, if you will, that do align with, I think, with a lot of different concepts that that we have practiced here. Basically, one of them is cutting out busyness, and that's where I was talking about Seneca with the shortness of life. Also focusing on friendships, having good friends, whatever good friends. Epictetus actually speaks to that, specifically. So these are some of the kind of cross, links that we can actually make. And I think that would be interesting as far as an exercise, because as Yasuhiko had said, this could supplement a philosophy. And I think that's one of the more important things about the important thing about this meetup is that we can take from various schools of thought or philosophical practices, and as long as the fundamental why we're doing something, the fundamental goals of our philosophy don't change, we can integrate certain practices. So if you're a Stoic and virtue is your highest good, as long as you don't change virtue being your highest good, you can integrate something like Ikigai into your practice, and it would still be Stoicism in a way. So there's a lot of other aspects to it. I'm making it a little bit more simple than it is, but I'm just saying we can borrow from different traditions of thought and different practices, because a lot of it is aligned with, I find a lot of similarities. There's a lot of deep introspection work. There's an idea of finding purpose. So anyway, it would be interesting to hear if anybody else in all the philosophies that we've covered here, whether it be the Bhagavad Gita, whether it be the Tao Te Ching, whether it be even Confucius, if you want to relate it to the 14th century where there was a lot of hierarchical structures, whatever other philosophies that we've covered here, Gospel of John, there was one element of it. Well, I'm not going to go on, but anybody, feel free to raise your hands. I think Jane.
Yeah, I think I really like what Yasuhiko mentioned about, how this is actually the purpose of this meetup, for our theory is about how we make the philosophy from this rational thinking into more practice. And as he mentioned, it's very important to be part of like your feeling, your emotion, and then they be part of you instead of this just thinking part of. I think that's the difference between a lot of Western philosophy and Eastern. Eastern, I think, is more, if I think there's personality test, maybe there's more feeler on the Eastern culture and more thinker on the Western culture. That's my guess. But, I think this is exact the purpose of the meeting is we learn so many philosophy, and I found a lot of time it's much easier to think about something and you feel great without doing anything and apply it in life and your life still the same. So it's like how we use what we learned from theory to practice. And so I found this Ikigai is a great kind of integration of this idea more close to reality and close to practice that we can easily apply to. Yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you, Jang. I mean, the thing that attracts me to Stoicism so much is that it is practical. It has a set of practices that you actually ask yourself questions, and it's the basis of cognitive behavioral and rationally emotive behavioral therapy. So these are things that are not only rooted in philosophy, but they're actually rooted in scientific practices now. Where you're working on reframing your perspective on the world. And there are sets of exercises like, you have an adversity, what's the behavior, what are the consequences of that behavior? Are you looking at are you analyzing the situation objectively? Why are you getting upset? What are the reasons you're getting upset? And you ask yourself those questions, you go through that process. And that's the better off you become in actually maintaining a certain degree of equanimity. And the more equanimity that you achieve, the less emotional and upset that you'll be, and the better decision making you'll have. That's the theory. But it's not that it's rooted in practice, in a lot of different practices, and they have the reason. Again, I like things like the view from above to give you perspectives from the different that what other people may be going through, so that it kind of in relative terms helps you get through a very difficult period of time, because you realize you're not necessarily the only one going through a difficult period in your life. So these are things that behaviorally actually make a difference, and they made a difference in my life on a practical level. And if I understanding what we control and don't control, probably I think that can be applied to all of us. I mean, I think that is something that is as fundamental, as practical as you could possibly get. I think Paul has an exclamation point.
Yes, Paul, feel
Yeah.
free to.
Thank you. When I think about your question, Joe, I come back to this idea of the felt sense that if I haven't tried this, but I venture to think if we went into each of the traditions we've studied, if we looked at the Tao Te Ching, if we looked at Confucius, even maybe if we looked at the Gospel of John and the other parts of the Bible, if we looked at the Bhagavad Gita for advice on how to find meaning, we would come back, in Buddhism, we'd come back to the felt sense. We'd come back to pray, read the Bible, read the passages, read the 30% of the Bible is poetry, read the poetry, pray, it will come to you. Study, do the practices, do yoga, meditate. It doesn't have a cognitive-based system to answer these questions, but they have answers in the form of finding meaning by going deep into the traditions that I just mentioned, any one of them. And you come back to the same felt sense at the core that leads you to your right action. There's my answer to tie it together, best I can do.
Thank you, Paul. Up next, we have David.
Joseph mentioned the word reframing, and I thought that was very good, because in a sense, Ikigai, for us in the West here particularly, who are, we've been brought up kind of as individualists, ego is huge part of our psyche. And Ikigai is a way of reframing where we become more a part of the world rather than being separate from it as our egos tend to make us feel. And individualism is kind of a separation. The individual is paramount and the rest of the world is less somehow. Whereas in the case of Ikigai, you're more a part of the world. You're less individualistic. You're looking to the world. You're looking at your particular position or your work within society to give you a sense of self. It's kind of a reframing, as Joseph used that word, and I like it, a reframing from what we typically in the West see ourselves as kind of like we're up here and we got to figure out how to get the world to, we got to have a passion. We have to have, we love what we do and we got to do what we love. We can't be, doing anything less than that. And I think that that's a problem because most jobs are somewhat less than perfectly lovable. And I think Ikigai goes a long way towards more of an acceptance of your place in the world and all that it entails, and hopefully gives you some resilience to handle the stuff that isn't as pleasant as you would like. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, David.
I mean,
Go ahead,
I think
Joe.
you make a really good point. I think you make a really good point. Ultimately, this is about deep introspection and knowing yourself. That's what this is. And then you can actually have a more objective view of what your skills are, and you can't dilute yourself. So I think that it is reframing, but it's also self-knowledge. So I think that it's on a number of levels. This is a very practical and actionable philosophy to employ, and it's one of many. I mean, ultimately, you have to be able to ask yourself the right questions as well.
I think deep introspection is a little bit misleading. I think Ikigai is more, you don't have to have that deep introspection. It's more physical. It's a physical reality that you are living in this physical world. You have this physical job. You've got a society around you, and it's connecting and feeling that connection and the importance from being whatever the role is that you're playing in that society. That gives you the connection. Deep introspection to me seems, okay, we're back to the ego, we're back to individualism, we're separating ourselves from the world and saying, okay, deep down, who am I, and what am I? I think Ikigai is a little more, how can I put it, more in the world and a little less in the head. That's what I would say. That's just my take. Thanks.
Yeah, one of the two fundamental things that I actually outlined early in where there's internal and external work, really kind of speak to doing deep internal work. And I would argue that you would have to. It's not necessarily just the ego or I think you just have to understand the why you're doing something in the first place, and that's a healthy thing because that'll change your behavior.
Thank you, Joe. I don't see anyone else, and we are coming to the end of the.
I want to say something. Yeah, so I want to say the beauty of Ikigai is kind of balance between the Eastern culture of like social structure fit in and Western culture's individualism. It's kind of like if we talk about interdependent, so we don't want to be independent, we don't want to codependent. The healthiest relationship is interdependent. It's kind of like in the middle of kind of like you have to find yourself, but you also need to fit in. I think that's the beauty of this. But maybe in the East, in Japanese, traditionally, they're more about fitting social structure. Maybe in the Western context, maybe we're thinking more about, how we more related to society instead of like the superhero, everybody need to achieve their dream. We heard all the success story, but never heard the failed story because nobody asked them to tell their story. Like all these famous actors, they go through this pursue their dream, this success, because only success people have the opportunity to tell their story. So I think it's kind of like finding the balance. That's the beauty of this very practical philosophy to some way. Yeah.
Thank you, Jing. I don't see anyone else that wants to speak.
Ramana, I think. Ramana wants to speak.
Who?
Ramana.
Oh,
He's waving. He didn't put up a exclamation mark.
go ahead, Ramana. Ramana, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
So I came here only for the purpose of Ikigai. I didn't know that anything about it, purpose of life. In fact, the reason I came here, just 2 days ago, I interviewed a neurosurgeon who went through a near-death experience. His name is Dr. Evan Alexander. What he said was the purpose of life was to understand self and then understand the one mind. We all have one mind. This is it's a disease that we think we're all separate from each other. It's kind of a disease that is a identity disorder, dissociative disorder. We all think that we are separate from each other. So it's a psychiatric condition. So we need to be connected together. And that lady explained it very eloquently. As interdependency is the key to succeed. I think that's a practical way, because if only rich people can tell you the story. We don't want to do that. So you have to have interdependency and give an opportunity to all of us to voice their. I became a voice because the rich people are only talking about nonsense. The IT industry became one of the. They don't even know what is AI. They talk every minute, every second. They talk about AI. They don't understand AI. So this is a problem. So when somebody with the knowledge, they don't have the voice, then they can't say. So we need a voice. For that, you need money. You need resources. That's what exactly he was saying. I agree with that. I am struggling to find that path at this age, because I did everything, experience all those things. Now, at this stage of my life, I find that anybody's interested in volunteering for my show or anything, that I'm more than welcome. Anybody come. It's called medbricks.com. You can send me an email.
Thank you, Ramana. Up next, I have. Sorry, I have to scroll up a little bit. I have Elena, followed by I'm sorry, I'm gonna mispronounce this. Sayoyan?
Yes. Hello. Good evening, everyone. If Yasuhiko is here, I wanted to ask him a question. He mentioned that it's a feeling. So when we speak about Ikigai, it's more like a feeling and not a philosophy. So does it mean there is not enough theory in this particular idea? And then another question that I have, why is it used by companies and corporations?
Yasuhiko, feel
Yes.
free.
So Ikigai is a felt sense. It is not feeling, it is a felt sense. So it is like a kind of thought integrated with a feeling. And depending on people's level of consciousness, people can have Ikigai in one level. So original Japanese culture, people are more collectivist. So you can find the Ikigai in that mode of consciousness. And Americans and Westerners, they're more individualistically oriented. And therefore you can have Ikigai in that sense. So it can apply to both. And I was just going to say that, we are so used to thinking dualistically. So, okay, Ikigai collectivist, Ikigai individualist. And we do have an opportunity to have the third way today, transcending both collectivism and individualism. And so we can have Ikigai, which is felt sense based on very advanced philosophical understanding of life and the universe. To me, my Ikigai is to align myself with the purpose of the universe. Unlike most philosophers, I do see teleological movement and entelechy in the whole universe. It is a self-creating universe which has a teleology. So my Ikigai is to living in accordance with it. It is no longer individual or collectivism, but is, you can say, cosmic. So you can have a Ikigai on a cosmic level. And depending on the person, you can choose wherever the level you want to have Ikigai, which works for the person, so long as it becomes a felt sense, so that it gives you the psychological resilience, courage, and strength to live your life. So, Ikigai is not just simple. Originally, it may have been simple, but it can become extremely profound and cosmic, depending on the person. But if it's cosmic and that doesn't become the felt sense, it is just an intellectual exercise. That is very, very important. It has to come down to the feeling, but it is not just feeling. It is based on wisdom, understanding, and knowledge.
Thank you, Yasuhiko. Joe, did you want to say something? It looked like you did.
No.
Okay, good. All right. Up next, I have. I'm going to mispronounce this. I apologize in advance. Zhao Xiaoyang? You had an exclamation point? Is he still here? Um. Last name is Foster. You had your
I
hand
think
raised.
she can unmute for some reason.
She should be able to.
Oh. Can you speak now, Xiaoyan?
No, I did not put a exclamation mark. Did I? I don't think so.
Oh.
You did, but never mind if you don't want to.
Oh, okay. I guess that something happened. Okay.
Up next we have. Let's see. We have Ashita, then David, and then Ocean.
Which one? Ashita can speak now?
Yes, Ashita.
I'm waiting and I forgot what I should say. When people talk about so many deep things like a philosophy and what is a felt sense of feeling of Ikigai. Well, I was born and grew up with this word, Ikigai. It's kind of a so simple thing, like my finger, my leg, everything is Ikigai. It's no big thing. So actually, rather than explaining what it is just, I want to show my example. I must say examples of my Ikigais. Well, getting up early and watch the sunshine, that's Ikigai. I know this word, Ikigai expression. That's why I can use this thing so easy. Doesn't matter at all. Just I say, I like this, the collection of I like this, it's Ikigai. Coming here to meet people like you and talk about the philosophy, talk about so much things, very important things like today is Ikigai. If I continue to join this, see, all kinds of things I like to do is a collection of Ikigai. And sometimes I've been used Ikigai, a joke. This is my Ikigai. Oh, no silly thing I do. I like it. It's a joke, joking. So it's important. It's a very, very simple thing, not a matter of philosophical item. It's a laughing matter. It's a kind of living, very happy, makes me happy. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Ashita. Up next, I have Ocean.
No, it was me.
Oh, I'm sorry, David. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You got
Thank you for
exclamation
telling me.
marks. You got hands. You got exclamation marks. It's too confusing. Anyway, I don't know if yes or he goes. Oh, he's not. He
Yeah,
left.
he left.
Oh, okay.
He had to
Because
go.
he was kind of. I thought towards the end there, he was. When he was talking cosmic, his place in the cosmos. I thought that's rather Taoist. What I actually had an idea is Ikigai could also be used not just with the work that you do with society. I mean, that's the origin of it in Japan, the idea of gaining meaning through your place in society and the work that you do. I think Ikigai could also be expanded to your fate, dealing with your fate, your place in the universe, which is kind of the cosmic idea. When he mentioned cosmos or place in the cosmos, this is what gave me the idea that this could be used to have as I used the term before, psychological resilience to handle your place, your fate, because sometimes fate isn't that pleasant, just like some jobs are not that pleasant. But I think if you could expand this whole idea of Ikigai a little bit broader to handling life in all its adversity, say, which is kind of Stoic. The Stoics and the Buddhists, they also, I think, hope to achieve some psychological resilience through their own beliefs. The only trouble I have with Stoics and Buddhists is they tend to negate the humanness of us all. Buddhism, seems to me a lot of it is suppressing your natural tendencies and feelings. And Stoicism basically says accept what you cannot change, and actually, according to Epictetus, depending on that, you should like what happens. So that if your kid dies, he even mentions your kid dies, you should almost like that as being part of the world that you cannot change. To me, that's unrealistic. But this Ikigai, I think, is more kind of accepting your place in the world as part of a society, which is the emphasis in Japan. But even for us Westerners, just accepting your fate as being what the universe or the cosmos has given you. Thank you.
I have to disagree with that. That's really
Wait,
wrong.
Ramana, can you raise your hand?
Yeah.
Ocean's actually
Well,
first.
Because
we're
that's a
actually
very
going to come
wrong
to a
statement.
close here. We're going to come to a close
In
here.
telling somebody
Xiaoyan
they
is in the line.
can't ask for anything.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
Xiaoyan is in the
Anyway,
line.
I'm done. Thank you all. Good night.
Yeah.
I'm
Why don't
next.
we bring the meeting to the close? Ebony.
Yeah, can we have Xiaoyan? She's my friend. Actually, she introduced me the Ikigai concept. So
I thought
think
you said she didn't want to speak.
Do you want to speak?
It's my turn, right? It's my turn, right?
Yeah, you can speak first. Yeah.
But
yes, thank you. Yeah. So yeah. Again, going back, I think some people might have misconception, or overly philosophizing this Ikigai. Like I said, Ikigai is simply that something you feel deep meaning and gives you deep joy or meaning in something, and might involve some pain, like when you're if you're a firefighters, and your Ikigai or meaning is to save other people, even though you may lose your life, and losing your life may be painful, but saving other people is more honorable and gives you more meaning in life. So that's Ikigai. So you don't have to overtly philosophizing to that extreme level that some people do. And but the joyful feeling and the meaningful feelings. And so I think Ashida mentioned a few minutes ago that his Ikigai, one of his Ikigai to join this come to this group, because I'm sure he feels his curiosity, intellectual, was stimulated by a lot of intelligent members here. The conversation, if he found this meetings to be boring and nothing he can learn from, then I don't think he will feel Ikigai. So it has always going back to some meaning in what you do and pleasant feeling. So it's both feeling and thought. Of course, yeah. So and
thank you,
be careful.
thank you very much.
Be careful about
we're
it.
going to close.
Yeah,
please close up because we're going to close the meetup here.
Okay, no problem.
Can we have Xiaoyan talk? You know, she's the one. Yeah.
Go ahead.
She
I'll
wants
have
to
a
talk,
couple
yeah.
closing comments and we'll be done.
Yeah. Can you unmute? Please unmute. Xiaoyan, can you unmute?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry I was on mute earlier. But yes, I was very impressed by this book. And I think that nowadays, a lot of people like this book is because we lack of the value, the social value that the book talk about. We need to slow down, enjoy simple life. It's just simple life. We don't have to achieve so much. The society nowadays push everybody. Parents push their kids to achieve higher grades, to go get higher job. You know, this is what makes us stop us to enjoy the simple life, simple joys. Why don't we slow down? Why don't we allow our kids to have simple joy and praise them? Like they make cookies for us. We don't have to praise them when they bring home good grades, but we can just enjoy them, enjoy their great smile. And that's what I think the Ikigai is talking about. Slow down. Like when I compare myself to my grandma's time, my grandma was a happy person because she didn't ask for much. But nowadays, I think when I look at myself, I always want, I want more. I want to earn more money. And that's a problem. I think that's why I'm impressed by this book. So
Thank you so much for actually for bringing this book to our attention. I mean, I couldn't agree more with the idea that you're doing, you're analyzing what's important, and the interactions that you have with your children are important, not just some, going to work to earn more money. So having those priorities set ultimately gives you a grand goal for living. All right, everyone. So there are meetups all weekend. Go ahead and check on the 52 Living Ideas website. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and everybody have a good weekend.
Good night.
Yeah.